Hey guys, today we're diving headfirst, or maybe just gently wading, into the primordial swamp of human imagination. Picture this with me. You're an early human, perhaps shivering lightly by a sputtering fire, the vast, inky blackness of prehistory pressing in around you. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every snap of a twig, every distant, guttural roar could signal the end of your very brief existence. You're not scrolling through TikTok. You're not even sure if tomorrow's breakfast involves berries or being breakfast. And let's be honest, statistically speaking, in that world you probably wouldn't survive the week. It's a harsh reality, but it's precisely this constant, primal anxiety that lays the bedrock for one of humanity's most enduring and terrifying creations, the dragon. You see, long before we started building pyramids or figuring out how to make a decent cup of coffee, your ancestors were locked in a desperate, perpetual struggle for survival against creatures that would make your skin crawl, and your heart pound a rhythm faster than any drum circle. Your daily reality was a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek with things that wanted to eat you. And what kind of things were those? Well, you can start with the slithering, silent menace, the snake. It's a creature universally reviled and revered, its limbless locomotion and unblinking gaze capable of inspiring a visceral terror. You're trekking through tall grasses, your bare feet brushing against unseen dangers, and suddenly, there it is. A coil of muscle, patterned scales, a flicker of a forked tongue. You know, just your average Tuesday. But imagine a snake not just a few feet long, but one that could swallow you whole without even a hiccup. Think pythons, anacondas, and then dial it up to 11. The sheer predatory efficiency, the crushing power of constriction, the venom that could shut down your world in minutes. It's all there, etched into your genetic memory. The serpentine form, thus, became one of the foundational elements in the early mental blueprint of a super-predator. It's efficient, silent, and frankly, a bit creepy. And because early humans lacked the medical marvels of today, like, say, anti-venom or even a simple aspirin, every snake bite was a gamble with grim odds. You learn to respect and deeply fear anything that moves like a shadow and bites with lethal intent. Then you factor in the sheer brute force, the earth-shaking presence of other apex predators. You're not just worried about a tiny viper. You're also scanning the tree line for the gleam of a big cat's eyes, listening for the low growl that vibrates through your chest before you even spot the creature. Imagine the power of a saber-toothed cat, or a cave lion, or even a bear, a creature that could swipe you into oblivion with a single, casual blow. You'd probably think, well, that's just rude. These creatures, with their razor claws and teeth, their incredible speed and strength, contribute the muscular bulk, the raw power, and the formidable fangs to our nascent dragon. And let's not forget the creatures of the sky. While you might admire an eagle soaring gracefully, your ancient self recognized it as a predator. Those keen eyes, those crushing talons, that ability to snatch prey from above, it all feeds into the idea of a creature that dominates multiple domains. Early human fear wasn't just about what lurked in the bushes. It was about the threat from above, too. You're constantly looking over your shoulder, but sometimes you should have been looking up. It's a constant vigilance that, frankly, makes our modern anxieties about forgetting your phone charger seem a little quaint. One mainstream historical fact that underscores this fear is the prevalence of powerful, often composite, animal imagery in early cave paintings, from the Paleolithic era onward. While not always explicitly dragons, as we know them, these depictions often merged features of dangerous animals. The strength of a bull, the swiftness of a horse, or the menacing presence of a big cat. reflecting a deep preoccupation with the beasts that dominated their world. This blending wasn't just artistic license. It was an attempt to visually encapsulate the ultimate threat, a creature possessing the worst traits of many. A quirky tidbit on this front comes from some fringe theories that suggest early humans, having encountered fossilized remains of dinosaurs, which are, let's face it, pretty draconic in appearance, incorporated these findings into their mythological beasts. Imagine stumbling upon a triceratops skull. You'd probably scream, then try to make a hat out of it, but also feel a profound sense of ancient power and dread. It's a fun thought, even if solid archaeological evidence connecting specific fossil finds to specific dragon myths is still, let's say, hotly debated. And indeed, historians still argue whether the universal fear of snakes and large predators is an inherent, evolved human trait, or if it's largely a learned cultural response to environmental threats. But what is undeniable is that the amalgamation of these primeval fears, the silent coil of the snake, the crushing jaws of the crocodile, a creature that hasn't changed its "don't mess with me" look in millions of years, the predatory gaze of the big cat, and the sweeping shadow of the raptor, formed the very first, terrifying outlines of the creatures we would come to call dragons. These weren't just stories. They were a deeply ingrained psychological response to a world where you were often very low on the food chain. You're standing on firm ground, the earth beneath your feet solid, dependable. Or so you think. Suddenly, a low growl reverberates through the very bones of the world, not from the sky, not from some unseen beast stalking the savannah, but from below. The air thickens, charged with an unspoken dread, and you feel a tremor, a subtle ripple growing into a violent shake. The ground bucks and groans, cracks splintering the very bedrock as if an unimaginably immense creature is stretching, or perhaps simply annoyed by its long nap. Dust plumes, the smell of sulfur chokes your lungs, and a distant mountain, previously a serene sentinel, begins to rumble with an ominous, deep-throated roar. Molten rock, glowing like the eye of an angry god, begins to ooze from its peak, a fiery tongue licking at the sky. Buildings, if there were any, would groan and then shatter like ancient pottery, collapsing into dust. You quickly realize that no amount of running, no amount of hiding, is going to save you from this particular natural phenomenon. In fact, if you were experiencing an eruption of Krakatoa, or the San Francisco earthquake of 1906 without modern warnings or sturdy infrastructure, you probably wouldn't survive this. Sleep well. But imagine this, not through the lens of seismographs and tectonic plates, but through the eyes of early humans, utterly at the mercy of a world they barely understood. They lived not with geological surveys, but with fear. And what better explanation for the Earth's violent convulsions than a creature of immense power, something far beyond human comprehension or control? If the ground opened up, surely it was the maw of some unfathomable beast. If fire rained from the sky and rivers of molten stone flowed, what else could it be but the breath of a fiery, colossal being dwelling within the mountains themselves? This is where the dragon starts to shift from mere apex predator. Remember our discussion about the primal fear of beasts lurking in the shadows. Now the dragon takes on a new, more elemental form. It becomes the embodiment of the very earth's fury. Think of the ancient Greeks, for instance. They weren't just telling tall tales when they spoke of Typhon, the monstrous serpentine giant with 100 heads, whose defeat at the hands of Zeus led to his imprisonment beneath Mount Etna. The rumbling and eruptions of Etna, a very real and active volcano, were literally interpreted as Typhon's struggles, his fiery breath escaping through the mountain's vent. This isn't just a myth. It's a direct, almost tangible explanation for a terrifying, life-altering natural event. The Greeks weren't alone in this. Cultures across the globe, faced with similar geological anxieties, arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Consider the legends of the Naian beast in ancient China, a creature of immense power that emerged from the mountains and deep sea to terrorize villages. While often associated with the Lunar New Year and loud noises, its origins are also tied to the unpredictable and destructive forces of nature. The sheer scale and devastation of a landslide or a flash flood, particularly in mountainous regions, could easily be attributed to the rampage of a gigantic, unseen monster, much like the Naian. This concept that destructive geological events are the actions of sentient, often malevolent, entities provided a framework for understanding, and perhaps even appeasing, the unpredictable forces of their world. Now, a quirky tidbit for you. In some ancient Slavic folklore, dragons were believed to be born from thunderclouds or from the impact site of a lightning strike, implying a connection not just to earthly tremors, but to the very volatile atmosphere itself. Imagine seeing a storm, lightning tearing through the sky, and then a strange, serpentine creature emerging from the charred earth where a bolt hit. It's certainly more exciting than negative charge meets positive charge. These beliefs highlight humanity's need to personify the impersonal and often terrifying power of nature. When the earth rumbled, it wasn't just friction between plates. It was a beast stretching its colossal limbs. When the volcano belched fire, it wasn't just magma escaping. It was the monster's fiery breath. This connection isn't always about outright destruction either. Some cultures, particularly in East Asia, also associated dragons with water, rivers, rainfall, and floods. While floods can be devastating, they are also essential for agriculture. So the dragon could be a terrifying force of nature, yet also a benevolent one, capable of bringing life-giving rain. This duality is fascinating. It's not just the fear of something that destroys, but also the reverence for something that controls the very elements necessary for survival. A beast that can bring a deluge, whether life-giving or catastrophic, is a beast of immense power, a force of nature itself. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of volcanic activity in regions like the Mediterranean or the Pacific Ring of Fire directly led to more fiery dragon myths, while areas prone to riverine floods fostered water dragons. It's a chicken or egg scenario of mythology and geology. Did the environment shape the dragon, or did the dragon provide the only way for early people to make sense of their environment? Perhaps it was a feedback loop, a continuous dance between observation and interpretation. The roaring mountain became a roaring beast. The ground that split open became the jaws of a subterranean horror. The sheer scale of these natural phenomena demanded a commensurate explanation. A wolf, as fearsome as it is, cannot make a mountain explode. A lion, as powerful as it is, cannot cause the earth to swallow entire villages. For these events, you needed something bigger, something primordial, ancient, and undeniably powerful. You needed something with the might to command fire to split the earth, to control the very waters of the planet. You needed a dragon. And so, the dragon became the ultimate personification of Mother Nature's bad temper, her explosive fits, and her silent, crushing power. It allowed people to place a face on the faceless forces that could wipe out their existence in a single, terrifying moment. You're trudging through the parched, ochre earth, dust kicking up around your worn sandals with every weary step. The sun, A relentless golden orb beats down on the back of your neck, making the air shimmer above the distant, jagged peaks. It's a landscape that feels ancient, primordial, as if time itself has slowed to a geological crawl. You're not quite sure why you're out here, just that some innate curiosity, that human itch to uncover what lies beneath, has drawn you to this remote, windswept ravine. Suddenly, your foot snags on something solid, unusually large, partially buried. You kneel, brushing away centuries of accumulated grit, and then you see it. It's not just a rock. It's too structured, too impossibly vast. A curved segment, the size of your entire torso, with a density that speaks of eons. You trace its smooth, fossilized surface, feeling the cool, petrified texture beneath your fingertips. Then another piece, even larger, an enormous, hollowed-out socket that seems designed for an eyeball the size of a dinner plate. And then, a colossal, ridged spine, disappearing into the crumbling earth, suggesting a creature of truly unimaginable scale. A shiver, not from the heat, runs down your spine. Your breath hitches. You realize with a cold certainty that if whatever this belonged to were still alive, you probably wouldn't survive this conversation, let alone the creature itself. You'd be less a snack, more an inconvenient speck on its dental floss. Imagine, if you will, being an ancient wanderer, perhaps a nomadic hunter-gatherer, stumbling upon this exact scene. No paleontological degrees, no carbon dating kits, just raw instinct and a very active imagination fueled by the rustling shadows of the night. What do you make of these gargantuan bones? They clearly don't belong to a mammoth, a bear, or anything you've ever hunted, or, more accurately, anything that's ever hunted you. These are the remains of something truly monumental, something that must have possessed power beyond comprehension, a creature of immense strength and terrifying proportions. And what do humans do with things they can't quite explain? They weave stories. They imbue them with myth. They give them wings, fire, and a penchant for hoarding gold. Consider the ancient Greeks, for instance, who weren't just good at philosophy and creating surprisingly flimsy sandals. They also had a knack for finding really big bones. In regions like the Peloponnese and on islands in the Mediterranean, where large fossil deposits were exposed by erosion, they frequently unearthed the remains of prehistoric megafauna. We're talking about mastodons, woolly rhinos, and even dwarf elephants. Now, when an Athenian philosopher or a Spartan warrior found a massive, oddly shaped skull with a single central cavity, which was actually the nasal passage of a mastodon or a large elephant, what did they think? A cyclops, of course. A one-eyed giant straight out of their myths. The bones of creatures like the mythical dragon slain by Apollo at Delphi or the chimera were often attributed to these fossil finds. Mainstream historical consensus suggests these discoveries profoundly influenced their mythological landscapes, populating their world with giants and monsters that were, in their minds, perfectly real. It's hard to argue with a fossilized femur the size of a tree trunk. And it wasn't just the Mediterranean. Venture east, far, far east, to ancient China. Here, the interpretation of fossilized remains took a somewhat different, yet equally fascinating, turn. For millennia, what were known as dragon bones, or long gu, were highly prized commodities, widely used in traditional Chinese medicine. These weren't just metaphorical dragon bones. They were actual fossilized teeth, vertebrae, and other fragments of prehistoric mammals like stegodons, woolly rhinoceroses, and even early hominids. Ground into a fine powder, they were believed to possess potent healing properties. Everything from calming the spirit and treating dizziness to stopping bleeding and aiding in childbirth. Imagine, for a moment, a traditional healer carefully crushing what we now know is a dinosaur tooth, utterly convinced it's a piece of a celestial dragon, ready to imbue its mystical energy into a suffering patient. It's a quirky tidbit that beautifully illustrates how profound a cultural impact these ancient echoes could have, transforming scientific remnants into potent symbols of health and longevity. It almost makes you want to try some, doesn't it? Just don't ask me for a refund if it doesn't make you breathe fire. Now, historians still argue whether the discovery of colossal fossilized remains was the primary catalyst for the widespread belief in dragons, or if it merely reinforced pre-existing fears and archetypes born from natural disasters and apex predators, much like those primal shapes we talked about earlier. Was it a case of seeing is believing, or more a case of believing is seeing what you want to see in these giant bones? It's a chicken and egg scenario for the mythological ages. What we do know is that these physical remnants, these tangible proofs of something truly enormous having once walked or slithered the earth, provided a powerful, undeniable foundation for the stories. You see a fossilized skull with massive eye sockets and sharp teeth, and your mind, already primed by tales of destructive beasts born from volcanic fury, easily connects the dots to a creature of immense power. It's almost as if the earth itself was whispering ancient tales through its stony layers. These bones weren't just dead things. They were messages from an incomprehensible past, hinting at a world where creatures of impossible scale roamed freely, creatures that could effortlessly crush the life out of you, or perhaps, if you were lucky, offer you a bit of powdered bone for your headache. They provided a sort of proof of concept for the truly monstrous, giving a tangible form to the abstract fears that already lurked in the human psyche. When you combine that with the fiery spectacle of volcanoes, the shuddering ground of earthquakes, and the sheer terror inspired by an apex predator, you begin to build a very compelling case for the universal invention of the dragon. The bones merely cemented the reality of these creatures in the collective unconscious, turning shadowy fears into tangible, albeit fossilized, evidence. You're wading through tall grass, a sun-dappled path winding ahead. The air is thick, humid, carrying the scent of damp earth and unseen blossoms. Every rustle, every whisper of wind through the leaves makes you pause, your senses on high alert. You feel it, that ancient, instinctual prickle along your spine. It's the kind of feeling that warns you something small, something silent but utterly dangerous might be sharing your space. And often enough, that something is long, legless, and very, very good at hiding. Because, let's be honest, while you're out there appreciating the beauty of nature, nature might just be appreciating the taste of you. Okay, maybe not you specifically, but certainly smaller, less wary creatures. And if you ever find yourself eye-to-eye with a cobra, you probably won't survive this particular interaction without a very good first aid kit and an even better running technique. Think about it. Before humanity even dreamed of colossal beasts with leathery wings and fiery breath, before you unearthed the vast, petrified bones that whispered of giants, you had snakes. They were everywhere. From the arid deserts of Africa to the steaming jungles of the Amazon. From the rocky shores of Australia to the dense forests of North America. If there was a patch of land, there was probably a serpent slithering through it. They are the ultimate survivors, adaptable, evolving for millions of years, an ancient lineage stretching back to the dinosaurs themselves. And what do they look like? Scales, lots of scales. Imagine the sunlight glinting off them, a shifting mosaic of emerald, obsidian, or burnished gold. A dragon, fundamentally, is often depicted as a scaled reptilian creature. Where do you think that idea truly began? Their movement, too, is mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. That fluid, sinuous grace as they glide across the ground or coil around a branch seems to defy logic. It's a primal dance, a silent undulation that suggests immense power contained within an impossibly flexible form. You watch a boa constrictor squeeze its prey, and you understand immense crushing power without limbs. You see a viper strike with terrifying speed, and you comprehend instant, deadly venom. These are the building blocks, aren't they? The raw materials for a beast that could coil around mountains, constrict entire armies, and deliver a lethal, invisible blow. And let's not forget the sheer annoyance factor. You're just trying to enjoy a nice picnic, and suddenly, a legless noodle decides your blanket is prime real estate. Talk about uninvited guests. The ubiquity of snakes across continents is a cornerstone of their influence. Unlike large predators confined to specific biomes, snakes navigated almost every corner of the ancient world. You find them in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, guardians of pharaohs, symbols of renewal. You see them in Norse sagas, binding the world, a serpent so vast it encircles the entire globe. In Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the rainbow serpent carves rivers and creates landscapes. And in Mesoamerican cultures, feathered serpents, like Quetzalcoatl, embody wisdom and creation. No wonder their imagery transcended geographical barriers. They were a shared experience, a common thread in the tapestry of human interaction with the natural world, a creature that could be both feared and revered. One mainstream historical fact that highlights this deep connection is the significant role of the uraeus, the stylized upright cobra, in ancient Egyptian iconography. It was a potent symbol of sovereignty, royalty, deity, and divine authority, often depicted on the headdresses of pharaohs, signifying protection and legitimacy. It was believed to spit fire at the king's enemies, a clear, early link between serpent imagery and destructive, fiery power, centuries before anyone sketched a Western-style dragon breathing flames. This wasn't just a decoration. It was a powerful statement of divine right and formidable might, all derived from the humble cobra. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some folklorists suggest the mythical, or Ouroboros, the snake devouring its own tail, which represents cycles of renewal and infinity, might have origins in observations of real snakes eating their own shed skin, or even in rare instances of confused snakes mistaking their own tail for prey when stressed. It's a bit of a stretch, but it certainly paints a vivid picture of a serpent perpetually regenerating, which, if you think about it, makes for terrible fashion choices if you're a tailor trying to get a perfect fit. Still, the underlying concept of endless renewal is powerful. Think about the snake's ability to shed its skin. This act of ectasis, peeling away the old to reveal the new, is a powerful symbol of rebirth, regeneration, and immortality. Dragons, too, are often associated with longevity, ancient wisdom, and even resurrection. They are creatures of cycles, appearing and disappearing, growing vast and powerful over eons. This transformative aspect, so inherently part of a serpent's life cycle, seamlessly flowed into the dragon archetype, granting it an almost supernatural resilience. It's almost as if the dragon remembers every one of those countless sheds, accumulating wisdom with each renewed layer of scales. And what about the venom? That invisible, potent weapon. It's a silent killer, capable of bringing down creatures far larger than the snake itself. This concept of internal, potent poison could easily morph into the idea of a dragon's fiery breath, a concentrated, deadly expulsion from within. Both are devastating, both are unexpected, and both represent a profound, terrifying power that operates on a biological, rather than purely physical level. The serpent's bite delivers its power, just as the dragon's breath unleashes its destructive force. They are both expressions of a hidden lethal potency. Then there's the gaze. Some snake species, particularly constrictors, are said to have a mesmerizing effect on their prey, a hypnotic stare that paralyzes before the strike. You imagine yourself caught in those unblinking eyes, unable to move, and you immediately connect with the tales of dragons whose gaze could turn men to stone or fill them with paralyzing fear. It's a psychological weapon derived directly from the animal kingdom. And their preferred abodes? Dark, damp, hidden places. Crevices in rocks, burrows in the earth, forgotten caves. These are the original lairs, the prototypes for the dragon's horde-filled caves, places of mystery and danger. Consider the sheer variety, too. From the slender vine snake, almost indistinguishable from a twig, to the massive anaconda, capable of crushing a small crocodile. This incredible diversity of form and size allowed cultures to project any number of attributes onto their developing dragon myths. A small, venomous snake might inspire a quick, deadly, unseen draconic spirit, while a large constrictor could fuel legends of immense, land-bound leviathans. The sheer range of reptilian shapes offered a rich palette for the human imagination to draw upon, far more varied than, say, a lion or a bear. Historians still argue whether the widespread fear of venomous snakes primarily drove their integration into negative dragon portrayals, or if their mysterious, regenerative qualities more strongly influenced their depiction as wise, benevolent entities in certain cultures. It's a classic chicken and egg scenario, really. Was it the terror of the serpent that birthed the monstrous dragon, or the awe of its endless renewal that gave rise to the wise guardian? Perhaps it was a potent cocktail of both, a reflection of humanity's complex relationship with a creature that could both kill and symbolize eternal life. Regardless, the serpent, in its myriad forms and symbolic meanings, laid the fundamental scales upon which the dragon was built, shaping its very essence long before it took to the skies or guarded mountains of gold. It was a subtle, pervasive influence, weaving its way into the collective unconscious, forming the backbone of what would become the most universally recognized mythical creature. You're not just seeing a scaled beast. You're seeing the echo of a serpent, magnified and mythologized. A creature born from both primal fear and profound respect for one of Earth's most enduring inhabitants. 5 Sky Serpents, Cosmic Wonders. Explore how celestial phenomena from comets to constellations were interpreted as airborne dragons. You tilt your head back, the cool night air prickling your skin, and gaze up. Above you, an endless tapestry of inky black is studded with glittering pinpricks, each one a distant sun, a galaxy, a cosmic secret. It's breathtaking, isn't it? Today, you know these lights by scientific names: stars, planets, nebulae, the vast sweep of the Milky Way. But imagine, for a moment, you don't. Imagine you live in a time when the heavens aren't just a pretty picture or a navigational chart, but a living, breathing entity, a canvas for the truly colossal. Because when a fiery streak tears across that black canvas, trailing a tail that stretches for what feels like eternity, you aren't thinking about ice and dust particles. You're thinking about a monster. And frankly, if that monster decides to swoop down, you probably won't survive this. Not then, not now. This is where the sky serpent takes flight. For countless generations, humanity watched these hairy stars, comets, with a mixture of terror and awe. Their sudden appearance, their unpredictable paths, and that magnificent, terrifying tail. It just screams, dragon on a bad day, doesn't it? The ancient Chinese, for instance, meticulously charted these celestial wanderers, often seeing them as powerful, if sometimes malevolent, celestial dragons or messengers from the divine. They even classified different types of cometary tales, each with its own specific omen, like a cosmic weather report, only instead of scattered showers. It was imminent apocalypse, probably dragon-related. You can almost picture them, wise astronomers with their bronze instruments, sighing dramatically, "Oh, bother, another plumage comet. Guess we're getting floods this year," followed by general mayhem. This wasn't just a Chinese phenomenon either. Across Mesoamerica, in cultures like the Maya and Aztec, feathered serpents deities like Quetzalcoatl and Cuculcan were intrinsically linked to the sky, to Venus, and to the movement of celestial bodies. Their undulating forms, adorned with vibrant plumage, mirror the trailing glory of a comet or the ethereal shimmer of dawn and dusk. When a comet blazed overhead, it wasn't just a light show. It was a god made manifest, soaring through the cosmic ocean. And honestly, it puts your current Netflix binge-watching to shame. Imagine your entertainment being so epic it brings about the end of the world, or at least a really bad harvest. Then you have the constellations. You know, those cosmic connect the dots. You see a hunter, a bull, a pair of twins. But look at Draco, the dragon constellation, winding its way around the celestial North Pole. It's always there, a permanent fixture in the night sky, its starry coils seemingly guarding the very axis of the world. For many cultures, seeing patterns in the stars wasn't just a pastime. It was an act of imbuing the universe with meaning, projecting their earthly fears and aspirations onto the grandest stage imaginable. They saw the serpentine twist of the Milky Way as a cosmic river or a pathway for divine creatures, and the occasional meteor shower. Well, those weren't just bits of space dust burning up in the atmosphere. Oh no. Those were the discarded scales of some enormous, invisible sky dragon, shedding its skin in a display of impossible majesty, or perhaps even its fiery breath catching on the very air you breathe. Did you know that some ancient Norse sagas describe the aurora borealis, the northern lights, as the shimmering scales of the great world serpent, Jörmungandr, as it thrashes in the cosmic ocean? It's a quirky idea, certainly, a fringe interpretation for some. But when you see those ethereal green and pink lights dancing in the night, especially in the far north, you can almost feel the presence of something vast and impossibly old, can't you? It makes that crocodile dung sunscreen, remember that delightful concoction, seem almost appealing by comparison, given the sheer scale of the cosmic forces involved. The northern lights, a dragon's dance. It's a lot more evocative than solar particles hitting the atmosphere, even if it's less scientifically accurate. And what about eclipses? When the sun or moon suddenly vanished, consumed by an invisible entity. Across cultures, from the Vikings to the Vietnamese, the common explanation was a sky dragon, a colossal serpent, or a celestial wolf devouring the celestial body. Imagine the panic, the desperate banging of drums, the shouting, the prayers, all to scare away the cosmic predator and force it to regurgitate the sun. It's a primal fear, born from a profound lack of scientific understanding, but it's also a powerful testament to the human need to explain the inexplicable. And what better explanation for the sun going dark than a really, really hungry space dragon? It certainly beats a cloudy day, right? Historians still argue whether the universal presence of sky serpent myths, reflects a shared human interpretation of these dramatic events. Or, perhaps, echoes of a genuinely global memory of a particularly bright and long-lasting comet that seared itself into collective consciousness, influencing myths for generations. It's a captivating thought, isn't it? That a single cosmic event millennia ago could have seeded the dragon myth across continents, uniting disparate cultures under the banner of a shared celestial fear. So the next time you gaze up at the night sky, remember that you're not just looking at distant lights. You're looking at the same canvas that inspired our ancestors to imagine creatures of incredible power and terrifying beauty, born from the very fabric of the cosmos. The same patterns, the same fleeting streaks of light, were once seen as the living, breathing forms of the ultimate predator, not just on land or in the sea, but in the boundless reaches of the heavens themselves. You feel the current pull you, a cold embrace wrapping around your ankles, dragging you gently, insistently, deeper into the inky vastness. The surface shimmers above, a distant, fading memory of light and air before it winks out entirely. Now all that surrounds you is an unimaginable pressure, a silent, crushing weight that seeks to compress every molecule of your being. This is the realm of the truly unknown, where sunlight has never dared to penetrate, where creatures move with bioluminescent grace, or perhaps with a terrifying, unseen bulk. Your breath hitches, even though you're just imagining it, because this primal abyss, this crushing dark, is where some of humanity's most terrifying and enduring dragon myths truly began to breathe. You're not just floating in water. You're suspended in the collective unconscious of fear. Think about it. Our ancestors knew the rivers, the lakes, the coastal waters. They fished them, they sailed them, they depended on them for life. But beyond the familiar shores, beyond the reach of their simple boats and nets, lay an alien world. What lurked in those depths? What enormous, unseen leviathans could pull a fishing vessel under with a single, contemptuous flick of a tail? It's not just the unknown that's terrifying. It's the unseeable unknown, the one that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up even in your own bed. And let's be honest, if you actually encountered one of these ancient abyssal horrors, your chances of a delightful meet-cute are, well, they're basically zero. You probably won't survive this. Imagine the tailies whispered around a flickering fire, shadows dancing on cave walls after a storm at sea. A boat ripped apart, not by waves, but by something far more sinister, something that left massive, unidentifiable teeth marks in the splintered wood. Perhaps a fisherman, half mad with terror, swears he saw a colossal serpentine form, scales glinting like dark gems, rising from the churning water before plunging back into the depths. These weren't just stories. They were attempts to explain the inexplicable, to give form to the formless terror of the deep. In many ancient cultures, water was not merely a resource. It was a living, breathing entity, often capricious, sometimes benevolent, but always powerful. The rivers flowed, the oceans surged, and within them anything seemed possible. This inherent mystery of the deep sea directly fed into the creation of water dragons, distinct from their sky or earth-dwelling cousins. Think of the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, in Norse mythology. This colossal creature was so immense it encircled the entire world, its tail in its mouth, lying in the ocean's depths. Its very existence held the world together, yet its stirrings brought forth unimaginable storms and cataclysms. This isn't just a big snake. It's a fundamental force of nature, a personification of the ocean's vastness and destructive potential. Mainstream historical fact alert. The concept of a world-encircling serpent or dragon is surprisingly common across vastly different mythologies, from the Ouroboros in ancient Egypt to the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, who, while associated with sky and earth, also had strong water connections. It's like the universe collectively decided, you know what's really scary? A really, really big snake in the water. No Wi-Fi down here, just pure, unadulterated primal terror. And it wasn't just the truly enormous creatures. Consider the more subtle, yet equally terrifying, water spirits and lesser dragons that populated the rivers and lakes. In Japanese folklore, the kappa are mischievous, often malevolent water imps with a turtle-like shell, and a depression on their head that holds water, which is their source of power. If that water spills, they lose their strength. While not always depicted as a full-blown dragon, they embody the dangerous, hidden aspects of freshwater environments. A quirky tidbit. Some theories suggest the kappa myths might have originated from sightings of giant salamanders, or perhaps a creative explanation for the danger of drowning, which, let's be honest, is a pretty serious danger. It's like finding a sock in the dryer that definitely wasn't yours, but on a terrifying, you're about to be swallowed whole scale. Forget your waterproof mascara. Down here, nobody cares. Scholars still debate whether the widespread appearance of serpentine sea creatures in disparate cultures points to a shared primal fear of the unknown deep, or if it suggests a common, yet independently derived, interpretation of large marine animals like whales or colossal squids. Perhaps it was the distorted view of a whale's surfacing back, mistaken for scales, or the thrashing of a giant squid's tentacles in the moonlight that fueled these aquatic dragon legends. Or maybe it was simply the innate human desire to fill the terrifying void of the unknown with something that made a primal, guttural sense. A giant, ancient, powerful reptile. The sheer unpredictability of the ocean, the way it could swallow ships whole or unleash devastating tsunamis, demanded an explanation, a narrative. And what better explanation than a colossal, sentient force of nature, a dragon of the depths? You can't exactly send a strongly worded letter to the ocean about its behavior, can you? So, you invent a dragon to embody its moods. This anthropomorphism, this granting of agency to the elements, provided a psychological framework for understanding a world that was otherwise utterly indifferent to human existence. The crushing silence of the abyss is occasionally broken by strange, echoing clicks, or a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through your chest. Sounds that modern science can now attribute to specific marine life, but which, to ancient ears, must have been the very growl of the deep. These sounds, coupled with the immense, unseen movements of migrating whales or the sudden, terrifying appearance of a large shark, would have woven themselves into the fabric of stories, gradually transforming mundane, though still dangerous, observations into the stuff of legend. You remember that feeling of discomfort, that slight anxiety you felt when wading into murky lake water, even today. Now multiply that by 1,000 and add the very real possibility of a creature large enough to swallow you whole. That's the primordial soup from which our water dragons emerged, fully formed and terrifying. You find yourself now, not in a shadowy cave or a churning abyss, but in the luminous, silk-draped halls of power, where whispers echo off polished jade, and the scent of incense hangs heavy in the air. Here, the dragon isn't a lurking menace or a cosmic wonder. It's woven into the very fabric of authority, emblazoned on banners, carved into thrones, and sometimes you might even glimpse it dancing in the intricate patterns of an emperor's robes. You're standing, metaphorically speaking, in a place where the dragon is the ultimate status symbol, the ultimate power suit. And let's be honest, trying to usurp the power of a ruler who claims direct lineage from a celestial dragon. Yeah, you probably won't survive that particular career move. Best to stick to admiring the embroidery. Imagine, if you will, the Forbidden City in Beijing, even before it was called that, during the dynastic eras of China. The dragon isn't just a mascot here. It's the emperor's alter ego. He is the son of heaven, and the dragon, specifically the five-clawed imperial dragon, because anything less would be, frankly, rather gauche for an emperor, is his divine proxy on Earth. This isn't just a cool marketing strategy. It's a profound belief system. You see the dragon's visage on his ceremonial robes, a swirling, muscular form, often in auspicious gold or imperial yellow, clutching a flaming pearl, that elusive symbol of wisdom and prosperity. This wasn't merely fashion, it was a declaration. When the emperor wore his dragon robes, he wasn't just dressing up for work. He was embodying the very essence of cosmic power, connecting heaven and earth, ensuring prosperity and order for his vast empire. This association of dragons with imperial might wasn't exclusive to China, though perhaps nowhere else did it reach such an intricate and pervasive level. You could find echoes of it in other East Asian cultures. In Korea, the dragon was also a potent symbol of royalty, often depicted guarding treasures or bestowing blessings, aligning with the idea of a benevolent yet formidable ruler. In Japan, while less overtly tied to the emperor's direct embodiment, the emperor was descended from the sun goddess Amaterasu. Dragons still represented powerful, often watery deities, linked to the prosperity of the land, and thus, by extension, the well-being of the ruling class. They were elemental forces, and to have them on your side, or even better, to embody them, meant you were practically unstoppable. Think of it like having a really, really good public relations team, but instead of spinning narratives, they're literally controlling the weather and ensuring bountiful harvests. Much more effective, don't you think? One mainstream historical fact that underscores this connection is the strict regulation of dragon imagery in imperial China. Only the emperor was permitted to wear the five-clawed dragon. High-ranking officials might be granted the right to display a four-clawed dragon, and even lesser officials or commoners might have been allowed a three-clawed version, though this varied by dynasty. It was a visual hierarchy, a sartorial social ladder, where every claw counted. Imagine the sheer scandal if someone accidentally wore an extra claw to court. It would be like showing up to a black tie event in a tracksuit, just a total faux pas, but with significantly higher stakes, possibly involving a very short conversation with an executioner. Now for a quirky tidbit. During the Qing dynasty in China, there was a specific practice where the emperor's personal seals and imperial decrees would often include the phrase, Fengshen Chengyun Huangdi, which translates to emperor who received the mandate from heaven and inherited the fortune of the clouds. The clouds here often implicitly refer to the dragon, as dragons are mythical creatures of the sky and clouds. So it wasn't just about wearing the dragon, it was about having it literally written into your job description, a celestial endorsement on your royal CV. It adds a certain weight to the paperwork, doesn't it? The scholarly debate on this particular intertwining of dragons and rulers often circles back to the question of whether the dragon symbol was initially adopted by rulers to legitimize their power, or if its inherent cultural significance as a benevolent yet powerful force naturally led to its adoption by imperial houses. Historians still argue whether the dragon's ascent to imperial symbol was a top-down decree, consciously crafted to solidify dynastic rule. or if it was a more organic evolution from ancient folk beliefs about powerful, chthonic, or celestial serpents that gradually became associated with the divine right of kings. Was it a calculated branding exercise, or a natural progression of a shared cultural reverence? The chicken and egg question, but with significantly more scales and less clucking. Regardless, the outcome was clear. If you wanted to look powerful, and more importantly, be seen as powerful, you needed a dragon. Or 20. You step into the cool, silent embrace of what feels like the very breath of time itself. You're not in a dusty museum, nor a clamoring market, but a hidden cavern, its air thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something impossibly old, like ozone and forgotten scriptures. Around you, the walls aren't just rock. They're etched with symbols that shimmer faintly, almost too complex for your modern mind to grasp. This isn't just a cave. It's a vault, a repository, and you feel the weight of centuries pressing down on you. Because here, in the heart of the earth, you encounter the dragon not as a destructive force, not as a symbol of raw power or a cosmic wonder, but as something far more profound. The ultimate librarian, the most formidable of guardians. You see, for countless cultures across the globe, the dragon isn't merely a beast of terror or a regal emblem. It is the keeper. It holds the secrets, guards the truths, and protects the sanctity of places where the veil between worlds thins. Imagine the sheer audacity of walking into a dragon's domain, not to slay it, but to learn from it. You probably won't survive this academic pursuit, let's be honest. Your chances of getting that PhD thesis peer-reviewed by a dragon are, shall we say, less than ideal. Think of the mighty lung, the Chinese dragon, a benevolent force, often depicted swirling amongst clouds, but just as frequently coiled around the pillars of heaven or residing in deep, clear springs. These are not merely places of power. They are conduits of the Tao, the cosmic flow of existence. And the lung, with its wisdom gleaned from millennia of observation, ensures that this flow remains balanced, untainted. You might recall the deep connection of water to life and knowledge, how early civilizations sprung up around rivers, and it's no coincidence that many of these wise, water-dwelling dragons were seen as the source of that knowledge, too. They weren't just guarding the water, they were guarding the secrets the water carried. Consider the ancient Greek Hydra not just a multi-headed monster, but a guardian of an entrance to the underworld, a place of profound, if dark, knowledge. Or the serpents of various indigenous traditions, like the rainbow serpent in Australia, who sculpted the land and taught the laws, their knowledge embedded directly into the very landscape. They didn't just guard sacred sites. They were the sacred sites, their very bodies interwoven with the ancestral wisdom of the land. It makes you wonder how much historical data is just stuck in a particularly stubborn dragon's hoard. You'd probably find more unread ancient texts than a forgotten hard drive from the 90s in there. This concept of dragons as custodians of lore is pervasive. In the mythical lore of the Norse, Fafnir, once a dwarf, transformed into a dragon guarding a vast treasure. While often seen as merely greedy, his treasure includes the Ring of Andvari, which bestows power and insight. Is it just gold and jewels he guards, or the profound, even dangerous, knowledge associated with such potent artifacts? The answer, you realize, is probably yes to both, because knowledge, like a dragon's hoard, is often multifaceted and not always easy to categorize neatly. And it's not just abstract knowledge. Dragons, in many tales, were the protectors of specific, often dangerous, wisdom. Think of the dragon Ladon guarding the apples of the Hesperides. These were no ordinary apples. They bestowed immortality and divine power. Ladon wasn't just a security guard. He was a gatekeeper to godhood, ensuring that such profound capabilities weren't easily acquired. You're talking about a creature with a serious non-disclosure agreement in its clause. A mainstream historical fact you might consider is the profound reverence for written knowledge in ancient China, where imperial libraries were considered national treasures. The dragon, as a symbol of the emperor and the state, naturally became associated with the protection of this vast body of accumulated wisdom. It was almost as if the dragon himself penned the encyclopedias, though, let's be honest, his handwriting probably involved a lot of dramatic swoops and scorch marks. A quirky, almost fringe tidbit comes from some esoteric traditions where dragons are said to guard, ley lines, energetic pathways crisscrossing the earth. These are not physical roads, but invisible conduits of spiritual power, believed by some to connect ancient monuments and sacred sites. The dragons, in this view, aren't just guarding the temples built on these lines. They are regulating the very flow of telluric energy, ensuring its purity and preventing its misuse. Imagine that job description. Responsible for global energetic grid stability. Must be able to breathe fire, occasionally nap for centuries. But why dragons? Why not a vigilant squirrel or a particularly stern-looking gnome? Well, if you remember our earlier discussions about the Earth's tremors and the bones of giants, the dragon embodies an ancient, geological power. It is intrinsically linked to the very foundation of the world. What better guardian for knowledge that is similarly foundational, deeply rooted in the origins of existence? Its immense age grants it perspective, its formidable power grants it unchallenged authority, and its often solitary nature allows for centuries of uninterrupted contemplation. Historians still argue whether the widespread depiction of dragons guarding knowledge merely reflected humanity's deep reverence for literacy and accumulated wisdom, or if it pointed to a deeper, shared psychological archetype of knowledge being a dangerous, jealously guarded commodity. Was it a projection of our own fear of hidden truths, or an echo of an even older, pre-human understanding of profound, unassailable secrets? You're walking through a space where those questions hang in the air, heavy and unanswered, like dust motes dancing in a single shaft of light filtering down from a crack in the cavern's ceiling. And somewhere in the deepest recess, you can almost hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of something truly ancient, eternally watchful, preserving the very fabric of time and truth. 9. Fertility's gift rains promise. You stand on sun-cracked earth, the dust rising in a choking cloud with every breath you take. Your throat is parched, your lips chapped, and the air shimmers with a heat that feels as if it's actively trying to evaporate you. The crops, what little remained, have withered into brittle brown husks, their hopes for a harvest long since evaporated along with the morning dew. Around you, the murmur of worried whispers rises, a collective plea to a sky that remains stubbornly, relentlessly, achingly blue. You're starting to wonder if the sun itself is mocking you, a giant, fiery eye watching your slow, inevitable desiccation. And honestly, in a world utterly dependent on the fickle moods of the heavens, where a failed harvest could mean the difference between life and a rather unpleasant, very thirsty demise, you probably won't survive this. But then the faintest whisper of wind rustles through the dry stalks, carrying with it a scent, not the cloying smell of baked earth, but something fresh, distant, alive. A single cloud no bigger than your thumb appears on the horizon, then another and another. Suddenly the sky darkens, a dramatic, bruised purple, and a low rumble vibrates through the ground. It's not thunder, not exactly. It's deeper, more ancient, a resonant growl that seems to echo from the very heart of the world. And as the first fat, warm drops splat onto your face, raising tiny puffs of dust, you might just catch a glimpse in the swirling deluge of a serpentine form coiling through the storm clouds, its scales shimmering with the wet light of the world reborn. This, my friend, is where the dragon truly becomes divine, not just a creature of fear or power, but an essential conduit for life itself. You see, for millennia, humanity's existence was a precarious dance with the elements. Before sophisticated irrigation systems or fancy weather apps that tell you it's definitely going to rain tomorrow. And then it doesn't, because those apps are just messing with you. The annual flood of a river, the predictable monsoon, or the gentle, persistent rainfall were not just welcome. They were everything. They meant the difference between feast and famine, between a thriving village and one scattered to the winds by starvation. And what force, powerful enough to churn the heavens, to swell the mighty rivers, to bring forth the life-giving deluge, could be more fitting than the dragon? Across vast swathes of Asia, particularly in China, the dragon isn't just a symbol of imperial might, as we discussed previously. Remember that rather regal image of the emperor's robes. No, here it transforms into the ultimate weather wizard, the grand master of the hydrological cycle. These dragons, often benevolent or at least neutral, resided in rivers, lakes, and deep wells, or soared through the clouds. Their breath wasn't always fire. Often, it was the very mist and vapor that condensed into rain. They were seen as the literal embodiment of the clouds, the wind, and the life-sustaining waters that fed the rice paddies and quenched the thirst of the land. You'd find elaborate rituals dedicated to these rain dragons, especially during times of drought. Emperors and commoners alike would offer prayers, sacrifices, and even build specific temples, hoping to appease or persuade the dragons to open the heavenly spigots. Some villages would even parade dragon effigies through the streets, mimicking their serpentine flight, or perform rain dances, a ritual so common across cultures. It makes you wonder if every ancient civilization just collectively agreed that wiggling your body would convince the sky to cry. And sometimes, perhaps purely by coincidence, it actually worked. This deep-seated association with water made the dragon a potent symbol of fertility. Not just the fertility of the land, mind you, but also of humanity itself. Water is life, and life begets life. So it wasn't uncommon for dragon imagery to be linked with concepts of birth, prosperity, and the continuation of the lineage. In many cultures, the union of a dragon, representing the masculine, often linked to the heavens and rain, and a phoenix, representing the feminine, often linked to the earth and harvest, symbolized cosmic harmony and abundant fertility. It's like the ultimate power couple, but instead of red carpet events, they're busy ensuring your crops don't spontaneously combust. Now, while the Chinese dragon's connection to water is arguably the most famous mainstream historical fact regarding this theme, don't overlook the slightly more fringe, but equally fascinating tidbits. For instance, in some ancient Slavic myths, certain dragons or multi-headed serpents, known as zime, were associated with specific weather phenomena and even controlled the flow of rivers, sometimes even causing floods if angered. You didn't just get a little drizzle. You got a full-on aquatic invasion if you stepped on their metaphorical toes. Similarly, indigenous tribes in the Americas often had powerful water serpents, sometimes horned or feathered, that guarded sacred springs or brought rain. The Aztec Quetzalcoatl, though primarily a feathered serpent, was also deeply intertwined with agricultural cycles and the very breath that brought life-giving rains. It seems everyone, everywhere, looked at a big snake and thought, "Yep, that's definitely responsible for the weather." The sheer universality of this water-dragon connection across disparate cultures raises an interesting open scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether this widespread association with water and fertility arose independently in various regions as a natural response to humanity's reliance on rain, or if there was some ancient, forgotten proto-myth of a great water serpent that diffused globally. Was it a case of parallel evolution, like how multiple species independently developed wings, or a shared ancestor, a conceptual dragon zero, if you will, that slithered its way into the collective unconscious of humanity? Think about the sheer force of a flood, the destructive power of a monsoon. Remember how we talked about natural disasters inspiring dragon myths? Well, the benevolent rain-bringer could also be the terrifying flood-causer. The duality is inherent. The same mighty force that nourishes can also drown. So, while you might be praying for the dragon to release the rains, you're also acutely aware that too much of a good thing can lead to a rather soggy, devastating mess. It's like getting a delivery of free pizza, only to find out they sent 1,000 boxes, and now your house is essentially a giant pepperoni and cheese-filled swimming pool. So, as the rain truly begins to fall, washing away the dust and invigorating the parched earth, take a moment to consider the silent, unseen architects of this miracle. The dragons, these ancient, mythical beings, were once the very embodiment of the most vital resource on Earth. They were the reason your ancestors survived, the reason crops grew, the reason rivers flowed, and the reason new life sprang forth from the fertile ground. They weren't just monsters to be slain. They were gods to be revered, life-givers to be entreated, and the very spirit of the water that makes your existence possible, even today, whether you know it or not. You might not see them coiling through the storm clouds anymore, but the echoes of their ancient promise still whisper in every raindrop that kisses the earth. You feel the air crackle, thick with an acrid tang that sears your nostrils, a scent far removed from the sweet, damp earth of our last journey. This isn't the refreshing promise of rain brought by a sky serpent, nor the hushed wisdom whispered by a cave-dwelling guardian. No, this is the raw, untamed fury of the dragon unleashed, a primal scream ripped from the very fabric of existence. You stand on the precipice of devastation, looking down upon what was once a bustling marketplace, now a sprawling tableau of ruin. Smoke billows in monstrous, shifting columns, painting the sky a bruised, angry purple, occasionally pierced by a flickering, hellish orange glow from below. The sounds reach you first, the distant, agonizing creak of timber giving way, the sharper crackle of thatch igniting, and beneath it all, a low, guttural rumble that vibrates through the ground, right into your bones. This is the dragon as harbinger, not of life, but of its abrupt, irreversible cessation. Think about it. All those times we've considered the dragon a symbol of power, of wisdom, of fertility, a force to be revered, perhaps even placated. Now shed that comforting illusion. Here you witness the pure, unadulterated essence of chaos incarnate. Imagine the sheer, overwhelming dread as villagers, perhaps just moments ago haggling over earthenware pots or gossiping about the latest harvest, now sprint, stumble, and fall, their faces etched with a terror so profound it steals their breath. The breakdown of order isn't just societal, it's existential. When a dragon descends with destructive intent, it doesn't just burn down buildings. It incinerates the very concept of safety, of predictable tomorrows. You understand, viscerally, that this is the moment your meticulously planned retirement fund, your carefully curated collection of ancient pottery, perhaps even your continued existence, goes up in smoke. And honestly, you probably won't survive this. Just saying. This destructive archetype, this bringer of calamity, is deeply ingrained in cultures across the globe. Consider the Vedic storm god Indra, who battles Vritra, a serpent dragon that withholds the life-giving rains, causing drought and desolation until it is slain. Or think of the Norse Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, whose thrashing signals the coming of Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, a period of immense destruction and societal collapse. It's not just about a large lizard breathing fire. It's about the personification of everything that can go wrong. It's the earthquake that swallows your village whole, the volcanic eruption that buries your crops in ash, the plague that sweeps through, leaving only silence. Humans, in their search for meaning amidst suffering, often ascribed such overwhelming, seemingly arbitrary destruction to a powerful, malevolent entity. And the dragon, with its immense power and ancient presence, was a perfect fit. The sheer, unmanageable scale of a dragon's wrath often made it an unstoppable force, a divine judgment, or simply a monstrous, indifferent engine of obliteration. Tales from medieval Europe frequently depict dragons as ravagers of the countryside, demanding tribute in livestock, or even human sacrifices, before laying waste to entire regions. Knights, those brave souls in clanky metal pajamas, were tasked with confronting these beasts, not just to save a princess, but to prevent the utter ruin of the land and its people. It was less about heroics and more about damage control on a truly apocalyptic scale. One rather peculiar tidbit, you might find, comes from certain lesser-known European folklore, where dragons were sometimes believed to be born from massive, unburnt piles of dragon eggs, or even from prolonged exposure to corrupt magic, transforming ordinary serpents into these destructive behemoths. Imagine trying to explain that to a medieval building inspector. Yes, well, the whole village spontaneously combusted, but it might have been due to that unchecked magic pile over by the old mill. The imagery of dragons as embodiments of chaos often merges with political and social anxieties. When empires crumbled, when plagues decimated populations, when natural disasters reshaped landscapes, it was easy to see the hand of a destructive, primal force at work. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of destructive dragon myths increased during periods of great social upheaval, or simply reflected humanity's perennial fear of forces beyond its control. Was it a comfort, in a perverse way, to believe that a singular, albeit terrifying, entity was responsible for the world's woes, rather than the chaotic confluence of disease, famine, and human folly? Perhaps. It certainly makes for a more dramatic bedtime story, doesn't it? No insurance claims to file, just a dragon to slay, or to be utterly incinerated by. You can almost taste the ash on your tongue, feel the heat radiating from the distant flames. This isn't a gentle breeze carrying the scent of spring flowers. It's the hot, sulfurous breath of a beast that cares nothing for your aspirations, your dreams, or your plans for a quiet Sunday afternoon. Remember how we discussed the primeval fear of apex predators? Well, now picture that fear magnified 1,000-fold, imbued with intelligence and armed with a flamethrower. It's not just a hunter, it's a living, breathing natural disaster. The very ground you stand on vibrates with the dragon's raw power. A reminder that even the most stable civilizations are but fragile constructs in the face of such overwhelming might. This is the dragon that scorches the earth, poisons the wells, and leaves behind only desolation and despair. You find yourself now not simply observing, but standing on the wind-blasted precipice of a mountain pass, the air thick with the acrid scent of sulfur and ozone. Below, a chasm of shadow stretches into infinity, and from its depths, a low, guttural rumble vibrates through the very rock beneath your feet. You grip an imagined, heavy sword, its hilt slick with nervous sweat, as you stare into the inky blackness that slowly, inexorably begins to glow with a malevolent orange light. This isn't just a monster. It's the personification of every dread you've ever suppressed, the ultimate challenge, the thing that makes you seriously consider if you accidentally signed up for the advanced hero package. Because, let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. This is where the dragon truly earns its infamous reputation, not just as a creature of primal fear or a symbol of elemental force, but as the quintessential antagonist, the final boss of so many mythologies. It's the ultimate gatekeeper to glory, the definitive test of courage, and the crucible in which destiny is forged. From the frosty Nordic sagas to the sun-baked tales of the Middle East, from the mist-shrouded peaks of Celtic lore to the vibrant tapestries of East Asian epics, the hero's journey so often culminates in a confrontation with a dragon. Why? Because the dragon, remember, embodies so many of the fears and chaotic forces we've already explored. The destructive power of volcanoes, the crushing weight of primeval predators, the untamed wilderness, and the very concept of disorder itself. To slay a dragon isn't just to kill a beast. It's to conquer chaos, to tame nature, or even to master one's own inner demons. Think of the old Anglo-Saxon epic, Beowulf. You recall how we spoke of bones of giants and the earth's tremors shaping legends. Well, Beowulf, after dispatching a couple of particularly unpleasant swamp monsters, finds himself in his twilight years facing a vengeful dragon. This isn't a playful dragon, nor a wise one. It's a creature of pure, destructive avarice guarding a hoard of treasure. Beowulf, now an aging king, knows this fight is his last. It's not just about stopping the beast from scorching his kingdom. It's about fulfilling his destiny, demonstrating his unwavering courage one final time. He walks into that dragon's barrow, knowing full well the odds are stacked against him, perhaps even humming a jaunty tune, if you can imagine ancient Anglo-Saxon heroes doing such things. The fight is brutal, and ultimately Beowulf triumphs, but at the cost of his own life. His victory is a testament to human fortitude against overwhelming, primordial power, a true mic-drop moment for heroism. Or cast your mind to the story of St. George. You're probably picturing a knight in shining armor, a damsel in distress, and a rather unhygienic dragon, right? This particular narrative, widely spread through medieval Europe, cemented the image of the dragon as the embodiment of evil, often tied to paganism or simply raw, unadulterated wickedness. George isn't fighting a force of nature or a symbol of raw power in this tale, but a literal evil beast demanding human sacrifice. His battle becomes a clear allegory, the triumph of good over evil, of Christianity over paganism. You can almost hear the triumphant trumpets as he lances the beast, probably thinking, "Finally, I can get this smell out of my armor." Historians still argue whether the widespread popularity of St. George and the dragon primarily reflects the early church's efforts to supplant older, more animistic beliefs, or if it simply resonated with a universal human desire for clear-cut victory, against a monstrous foe. Even in cultures where dragons were revered, like in China, the hero sometimes had to contend with a rogue or malevolent dragon, though the context shifted dramatically. Instead of pure destruction, it might be a dragon causing drought or floods, upsetting the cosmic balance. The hero's task then becomes not total annihilation, but often a restoration of harmony, perhaps by calming the dragon, or in rare cases, relocating it. It's less about brute force and more about understanding the flow of chi, the cosmic energy. You wouldn't just waltz in there with a big sword. You'd probably need a celestial divining rod and a very patient attitude, possibly even a good therapist for the dragon, who clearly has some anger management issues. The dragon, as the hero's ultimate foe, serves as a monumental test. It's a test of physical strength, yes, but more profoundly, it's a test of moral fiber. Do you flee? Do you negotiate? Or do you face the terrifying, fire-breathing embodiment of everything you fear, knowing that the fate of your village, your kingdom, or even the world rests on your weary shoulders? The dragon often guards something vital. Treasure, a princess, a sacred spring, or even the very fabric of reality. To overcome the dragon is to claim that prize, to prove worthy of destiny, and to transform from a mere mortal into a legend. It's the ultimate rite of passage, a graduation ceremony where the diploma is not a scroll, but usually a pile of gold and the eternal gratitude of a very relieved populace. You feel the grit of sand beneath your worn sandals, each step a testament to miles traversed. The air is thick with the scent of unfamiliar spices, saffron from distant Persia, cinnamon from the island realms of the east, frankincense carried from Arabia. Around you, a cacophony of languages rises and falls, a human tapestry woven from merchants, pilgrims, and adventurers. You're not just walking a path, you're traversing a vast, ancient network, a nervous system of global exchange where not only goods, but stories, beliefs, and fears flowed like the very rivers they often followed. This, you realize, is the grand bazaar of human imagination, where a terrifying serpentine beast from one valley could, with a few whispered retellings, morph into a winged, fire-breathing nightmare across an entire continent. And if you think you're having a bad day because your Wi-Fi is slow, imagine this journey. You probably won't survive the desert crossing if you don't know where the next oasis is, let alone if a dragon decides to have you for lunch. It's easy to imagine that every culture simply cooked up its own version of a dragon in splendid isolation, like separate kitchens all deciding to bake a cake, only to find everyone loves chocolate. But the truth is far more interconnected, more wonderfully chaotic. Think of the legendary Silk Road, not just as a pathway for silk and spices, but as a superhighway for ideas. Merchants traveling from China, laden with exquisite fabrics, would meet traders from Central Asia, Persia, and even the Roman Empire. They'd exchange not only goods, but also tales around flickering campfires. Imagine a Chinese merchant describing a benevolent, wise dragon, a rain-bringer and guardian of rivers, to a weary caravan leader from the steppe. That caravan leader, in turn, might share stories of his own people's fearsome, earth-shaking serpents. What happens then? Do the two merge? Do they influence each other subtly, or is it a direct adoption? Consider the Chinese dragon, the long, a creature of immense power, tied to water, imperial authority, and good fortune. As these ideas, along with the physical silks and porcelains, made their way westward, they encountered different local beliefs. In Persia, you had the Dahaka, a three-headed dragon of malevolence, a creature of drought and evil. When these two concepts met, Did the benevolent Long somehow soften the image of the Aji Dahaka? Or did the European fear of serpents imbue the traveling Long with a more aggressive, dangerous edge? This cultural blending, this mythological osmosis, is where the dragon's remarkable adaptability truly shines. It wasn't just trade, of course. Migrations played an equally significant role. Entire peoples, driven by climate change, conquest, or the promise of new lands, packed up their lives and their mythologies. As Germanic tribes migrated across Europe, they carried their own legends of serpentine beasts, often guardians of treasure hoards, which then mingled with the existing Celtic or Roman beliefs. The Vikings, for instance, with their longships carved with dragon heads, weren't just terrifying raiders. They were also formidable cultural vectors. Their sagas, filled with dragons like the Nidhogger gnawing at the roots of the world tree, undoubtedly influenced the dragon lore of the lands they touched, from the British Isles to Russia. One fascinating mainstream historical fact lies in the spread of dragon imagery along the maritime Silk Road. Seafarers, facing the unpredictable power of the ocean, shared tales of colossal sea serpents, creatures that could swallow ships whole. The Chinese concept of the Longwang, or dragon kings, who ruled the oceans and brought both storms and calm, found echoes in the monstrous sea dwellers of Southeast Asian and Indian mythologies. You can almost hear the terrified whispers of sailors in bustling ports like Malacca or Calicut, sharing accounts of scale-covered leviathans glimpsed in the depths. Each culture adding its own local flavor to the universal dread of the unknown ocean. Then there's the quirky tidbit. Did you know that the griffin, a creature with the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle, is thought by some scholars to be a result of Central Asian nomads finding dinosaur fossils? And as these tales of magnificent, winged beasts spread westward along trade routes, they might have subtly influenced the evolution of dragons, giving them wings where before they were purely serpentine. It's like a mythological game of Chinese whispers, where the message changes just a little with each telling, until the original serpent has sprouted feathers and learned to breathe fire. Historians still argue whether the widespread presence of dragons points to an independent, primal human psychological need to embody chaos or power, or if it's primarily a testament to the sheer effectiveness of cultural transmission and adaptation through trade and migration. It's a bit like asking if everyone independently invented the wheel, or if the idea just traveled really, really fast. Probably a bit of both. A delicious blend of human commonality and shared experiences. Think of the Venetian merchants returning home, not just with silk and spices, but with fantastic stories of beasts encountered in distant lands. Tales that would then be retold and reinterpreted in the European context, sometimes merging with existing serpentine myths, other times adding entirely new features. The European dragon, with its bat-like wings and fiery breath, likely owes a debt to both indigenous serpent fears and exotic tales of Eastern wonders. It's a truly global creature, assembled from bits and pieces of human imagination, carried on the currents of commerce and conquest, like a giant, scaled collage. You can almost see the ancient map-makers, not just charting lands, but charting the flow of monstrous ideas. You feel the rhythmic thrumming deep within your bones, a vibration that starts subtly, then grows, resonating through the very air around you. The scent of smoldering herbs, thick and earthy, swirls, catching at the back of your throat. Your eyelids feel impossibly heavy, yet behind them, a kaleidoscope of colors begins to bloom, swirling and merging in an intricate dance. You are poised on the edge of something profound, a threshold where the mundane melts away and the extraordinary beckons. This isn't just relaxation, it's an invitation to journey, to step beyond the familiar boundaries of your waking world. And then it appears. Not in a tangible form you could touch, but with an undeniable presence that fills your inner vision. It coils, vast and ancient, its scales shimmering with a light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Its eyes, deep and knowing, fix upon you, not with judgment, but with a profound, almost unsettling neutrality. You sense its immense power, a primordial force, yet there's also an odd sense of connection, like meeting an ancient, wise relative you never knew you had. This, you realize, is your guide. This is the dragon. For countless cultures across the globe, especially those steeped in animistic and shamanic traditions, the dragon wasn't just a fearsome beast or a symbol of imperial might. It was the ultimate psychopomp, the cosmic bus driver, taking your consciousness on routes that definitely don't show up on any terrestrial map. You're not merely observing it. You're feeling its immense presence, a profound weight that settles deep within your being, an invitation, or perhaps a gentle nudge, to step into the spirit realm. You find yourself moving, soaring on leathery wings through stardusted pathways, or perhaps diving into the murky, echoing depths of the underworld, where ancestral whispers drift like smoke. This isn't your average Tuesday evening meditation session. This is deep immersion, the kind that might just rearrange your internal furniture permanently. And if you think you're going to come out of this unchanged, well, you probably won't survive this journey with your previous perceptions entirely intact. That's rather the point, after all. In many shamanic traditions, the journey itself is fraught with peril. You're navigating landscapes woven from pure thought, encountering beings that defy conventional logic. The dragon, in this context, acts as your protector, your interpreter, and sometimes your stern taskmaster. It knows the hidden paths, the secret shortcuts, and the terrifying dead ends. It can part the ethereal mists, whisper the language of spirits directly into your soul, and shield you from entities that might, shall we say, overstay their welcome in your psyche. Imagine trying to explain to your family that your new best friend is a 1,000-year-old flying serpent. They'd probably suggest you cut back on the herbal tea. Think of the vast, intricate cosmology of indigenous peoples from the Americas, where serpentine figures often bridge the upper world, middle world, and lower world. For example, among certain Mesoamerican cultures, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, was not just a deity of creation and knowledge, but also a pivotal guide on spiritual journeys, facilitating contact with ancestral spirits and divine forces. This wasn't just about abstract belief. It was about active engagement, about people undergoing trance states, vision quests, and rituals specifically designed to encounter these powerful entities. You might be led to a place of profound healing, where the dragon breathes cleansing fire or soothes your weary soul with ancient melodies. Or perhaps it ushers you into a chamber of forgotten wisdom, where the very fabric of reality seems to hum with secrets, and the dragon encourages you to absorb knowledge that transcends human language. It's like being given the ultimate backstage pass to the universe, and your guide is an immortal, scaly bouncer who knows exactly where all the cosmic exits and entrances are. The role of powerful animal spirits as guides is a mainstream historical fact across almost every shamanic culture known to anthropology. From the Siberian shamans who commune with bear and wolf spirits, to the Native American vision quests seeking guidance from eagles and coyotes, the concept of a powerful animal familiar is foundational. What's truly quirky, though, is the consistent recurrence of the dragon or a vast, cosmic serpent as the primary, often supreme spirit guide. It's not always the cute, cuddly variety. Sometimes it's the kind that looks like it swallowed a galaxy and is currently considering you for dessert. But don't worry, it's a benevolent dessert consideration. Mostly. Consider the notion of the axis mundi, the world tree or cosmic pillar that connects heaven, earth, and the underworld. In many mythologies, a great serpent or dragon coils around this axis, acting as its guardian and embodying the flow of cosmic energy. When you embark on a shamanic journey, you are, in essence, aligning yourself with this cosmic axis, and the dragon becomes the living embodiment of that connection. It's the ultimate spiritual VPN, allowing you to securely access dimensions beyond your current comprehension. Historians still argue whether the universal appearance of dragon-like spirit guides is due to shared neurological experiences during trance states, perhaps a common archetypal image bubbling up from the collective unconscious, or if there was an ancient, perhaps prehistoric, diffusion of core spiritual concepts across vast geographical distances. It's the ultimate chicken or egg question, only with more scales and less clucking. Did everyone just independently dream up a giant flying snake, or did someone tell someone else, who then told someone else, all the way around the world? You might find yourself undergoing a symbolic death and rebirth, a common theme in shamanic initiations. The dragon here isn't just a guide, it's the agent of transformation. It might swallow you whole, only to regurgitate you, cleansed and renewed, a metaphor for shedding your old self and emerging with new understanding. It's like a particularly intense spiritual spa treatment, where the main therapist is a 1,000-year-old reptilian entity, definitely not covered by most health insurance plans. The dragon in these rituals often represents the raw, untamed power of the cosmos, a force that can be both destructive and creative. When it guides you, it's not simply pointing the way. It's sharing a fraction of that primordial energy, allowing you to tap into reserves of strength and insight you never knew you possessed. It teaches you to navigate the swirling currents of existence, to understand that chaos and order are two sides of the same very large, very scaly coin. It's the ultimate mentor, provided you're okay with your mentor potentially being able to incinerate a small village with a sneeze. Just kidding, mostly. As the journey begins to wind down, the dragon doesn't just vanish. It slowly recedes, its vibrant form fading back into the shimmering tapestry of your consciousness. It leaves you not with answers neatly packaged, but with a profound sense of connection, a subtle shift in your perception of reality. You return to your body, perhaps feeling a little disoriented, like you've just traveled light years in a nanosecond, but also strangely invigorated. The air in the room feels different, sharper, as if the very atoms are humming with the echoes of your journey. You carry a piece of that dragon with you now, a deeper understanding of the bridge between worlds it helped you traverse. You feel the chill before you even see the darkness. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something ancient, metallic, and distinctly unfriendly. Each step echoes in the echoing maw of the mountain, a place where sunlight dares not tread, a place where the very stone seems to hum with a forgotten power. You're deep within the earth now, navigating passages carved not by human hands, but by the relentless churn of millennia, or perhaps by something far older and immensely more powerful. The air grows warmer, a subtle heat that prickles your skin, carrying the faint, unmistakable whiff of sulfur and, well, let's just call it dragon musk. You know the kind. It's the scent of untold riches, of unimaginable power. And frankly, if you actually stumbled upon a dragon's treasure hoard, your odds of making it out alive with even a single gold coin are roughly equivalent to winning the lottery while simultaneously being struck by lightning. Just saying, this is the quintessential image, isn't it? The dragon, not soaring in the skies or lurking in the depths, but hunkered down in its personal vault, a monstrous accountant with scales and a fiery breath, meticulously guarding its ill-gotten gains. You're standing, metaphorically speaking, at the threshold of the dragon's lair, a place that transcends mere geology to become a symbol of primordial fear and insatiable greed. It's where the grand narratives of hero and monster often culminate, where the ultimate prize awaits, guarded by the ultimate guardian. Think about it. From Beowulf's final, fatal encounter with the barrow-dwelling dragon guarding its ancient treasure, to Smaug famously slumbering atop his mountain of gold in the lonely mountain, the motif is practically universal. You find it woven into the fabric of folklore across continents. These aren't just random caves. They're fortresses of ambition, dark cathedrals of avarice. They're usually deep within mountains, under the roots of the earth, or nestled in forgotten ruins. The darkness isn't merely an absence of light. It's a character in itself, enhancing the mystery, amplifying the fear, and perfectly concealing the glittering, deadly secret within. It makes perfect sense, of course. If you were a giant, scaly beast with a penchant for napping on piles of gold, would you set up shop in a brightly lit studio apartment? No, you'd want somewhere cozy, discreet, and ideally booby-trapped. So why this persistent image of the dragon as the ultimate hoard keeper? Part of it likely stems from ancient human experiences with real-world dangers and hidden resources. Imagine early humans exploring caves, often dark, dangerous, and home to apex predators. Remember those primal fears we talked about. But sometimes, these caves also held valuable resources. Water, shelter, flint, or even precious metals and gems. The danger and the allure became intertwined. The most valuable things were often the hardest and most perilous to acquire. This duality, this risk-reward dynamic, perfectly mirrors the dragon's hoard. It's a lure and a death trap simultaneously. Furthermore, ancient cultures often buried their dead with grave goods, sometimes even vast treasures, in elaborate tombs or barrows. These sites were often seen as sacred, protected, and sometimes cursed. The idea of a powerful, supernatural guardian for such wealth is not a far leap from reality. Think of the elaborate security measures in ancient Egyptian tombs, or the legends surrounding cursed pharaoh's gold. A mainstream historical fact here is the sheer scale of wealth interred in places like the tomb of Tutankhamun, which, upon its discovery, revealed an astonishing array of gold, jewels, and artifacts. A hoard truly fit for a mythical beast to guard, had it been left undisturbed for millennia longer. The concept of a powerful entity protecting hidden wealth became a potent cultural narrative. Then there's the sheer physical presence of the lair itself. These aren't just holes in the ground. They are often described as being vast, labyrinthine, echoing with unseen threats. The air is thick with the dragon's presence, the very stones seeming to absorb its power. Sometimes, the lair is an extension of the dragon itself, almost a calcified, rocky reflection of its monstrous ego. It's not just a home, it's a statement. And let's be honest, cleaning out a dragon's cave must be a nightmare. Imagine the dust bunnies, the stray gold coins, the occasional charred adventurer. You'd need a specialized vacuum cleaner and probably a hazmat suit. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the historical belief in some medieval European traditions that certain natural geological formations, particularly those with mineral deposits or hot springs, were literally the remnants of dragon activity, their blood solidifying into ore, their breath carving caverns, or their scales flaking off as precious stones. This imbued the earth itself with a dragon's presence, making any cave with a glint of gold or a wisp of steam potentially a dragon's ancient resting place or current treasury. It's a rather charming way to explain geology, if you ask me, certainly more exciting than tectonic plates. But beyond the tangible treasures, what else might dragons hoard? Sometimes it's not just about the shiny stuff. Dragons are often depicted guarding ancient knowledge, powerful artifacts, or even captive princesses. Though we're keeping things PG-13, so let's stick to less complicated forms of treasure. This broadens the hoard concept from mere physical wealth to include intellectual or magical power. It elevates the dragon from a simple greedy beast to a guardian of profound significance, making the hero's quest even more impactful. Historians still argue whether these legends were solely cautionary tales to deter grave robbers and trespassers, or if they genuinely reflected a deep-seated human fear of the unknown lurking beneath the earth, personified by these formidable, wealth-clinging entities. Perhaps it's a bit of both, a psychological tapestry woven with threads of avarice, primal fear, and a touch of the extraordinary that keeps us endlessly fascinated by these subterranean guardians. The allure of the forbidden, the glint of gold in the dark, the promise of power, all these elements converge in the image of the dragon's lair, an eternal monument to human desire and dread. 15. East meets west, diverging paths. Imagine for a moment standing on an ancient, windswept ridge, a mythical continental divide. To your left, the air shimmers with the promise of life-giving rain, and you feel the subtle hum of a benevolent power. You glimpse in the misty distance a long, serpentine form, scales glinting like polished jade, gracefully ascending through swirling clouds, perhaps even offering a pearl of wisdom. This is the east, but then you turn your gaze to the right. Here, the very ground beneath your feet feels scorched. A sulphurous tang stings your nostrils, and the sky overhead is a bruised, menacing purple. A vast, shadowy wing blots out the sun, and a roar deep as a seismic tremor rattles your bones. You instinctively duck, knowing full well that if this hulking beast spots you, you probably won't survive this encounter. This is the West. You're not just looking at two different creatures. You're witnessing the profound divergence in humanity's shared dream of the dragon. While we've explored the primal fears and natural phenomena that birthed the universal concept of a colossal reptile, the true magic lies in how diverse cultures then took this raw material and sculpted it into wildly different, yet equally compelling, forms. In the sprawling lands of the East, particularly China, Korea, and Japan, the dragon isn't just a powerful entity. It's practically a deity, a celestial force interwoven with the very fabric of existence. You see them depicted with long, slender bodies, often legless or with 4 short legs ending in claws, typically 5 in China, symbolizing imperial power, 4 in Korea, and 3 in Japan. They ripple through the air, embodying the very essence of the qi, the cosmic breath or life force. Their domain isn't primarily fire or subterranean hordes, but the vast, boundless waters, rivers, lakes, oceans, and the life-giving rain. It's why, even today, you'll find temples dedicated to dragons near sources of water, offering prayers for bountiful harvests and protection from floods. They control the winds, summon storms, and are the benevolent guardians of prosperity. The Chinese emperor, the son of heaven, often associated himself directly with the dragon, using its imagery on his robes and palaces, signaling his divine right to rule and his connection to the natural order. Imagine the pomp and circumstance, the elaborate rituals where the emperor, adorned in dragon-embroidered silks, would appeal to these mythical beings for the well-being of his empire. It's less about conquering the dragon and more about aligning with its immense, auspicious energy. Conversely, journeying westward, from the ancient tales of Mesopotamia and Greece to the sagas of Norse lands and the sprawling epics of medieval Europe, you encounter a creature often cast in a far more sinister light. Here, the dragon is less a celestial benefactor and more a formidable, often malevolent force of nature. It's typically depicted as a gigantic, winged lizard or serpent, covered in tough, often impenetrable scales, and possessing a truly inconvenient penchant for breathing fire. You'd probably recognize them by their bat-like wings, powerful limbs, and often menacing fangs, a far cry from the graceful, cloud-dwelling eastern serpentine forms. Their preferred dwelling, dark, mysterious caves or the depths of untamed wilderness, where they tirelessly guard vast hoards of gold, jewels, and ancient artifacts. This isn't just a quirky tidbit. This idea of the dragon as a greedy accumulator of wealth directly fueled countless hero narratives, where the beast became a physical manifestation of avarice and chaos, a challenge that heroes like Beowulf or St. George had to overcome. This fundamental difference isn't just cosmetic. It speaks volumes about the cultural values and prevalent anxieties of each region. In the East, where agriculture, particularly rice cultivation, was intrinsically linked to consistent rainfall, the dragon's association with water made it a symbol of life, fertility, and cosmic balance. Its power was something to be respected, perhaps even appeased, but rarely outright destroyed. In fact, herding a dragon could bring calamitous droughts or floods upon the land. Think of the intricate dragon dances during Chinese New Year. They're not about slaying the dragon, but inviting its auspicious energy. Now, contrast that with the West, where the untamed wilderness, predatory beasts, and the existential threat of chaos often loomed large. The dragon here became a potent symbol of untamed, destructive power that needed to be vanquished for civilization to thrive. Historians still argue whether these divergent portrayals emerged completely independently, or if there was an initial shared proto-dragon concept that simply evolved along wildly different cultural paths. Perhaps the ancient Silk Road, which facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas, also carried whisperings of dragon lore, which were then adapted to fit existing mythologies. But the outcome is undeniable. In the East, you seek the dragon's blessing. In the West, you sharpen your sword. It's a fascinating reflection of how humanity grapples with the unknown. Some find harmony, others find a foe to be conquered. And you thought choosing between sparkling water and tap water was a big decision. You're drifting now through the fog-laden landscapes of your own mind, past ancient gates carved with symbols you don't consciously remember, yet somehow recognize. It's quiet here, save for the faint echo of primordial whispers, the kind that might make the hairs on your arms stand up. You might think you're safe in the cozy confines of your own skull. But let's be honest, navigating the depths of the human psyche without a map is a bit like trying to find your way through a dragon's horde in the dark. You probably won't survive this without at least a mild existential crisis. But don't worry, you've got a seasoned guide, and we're not actually going in there unarmed. Our journey into the labyrinth of the mind brings us to the profound insights of Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who truly believed in the power of the unconscious. You see, while Sigmund Freud, his mentor and later intellectual sparring partner, focused on the personal unconscious, the forgotten memories and repressed desires unique to your life, Jung dared to venture deeper. He proposed the concept of the collective unconscious. Imagine, if you will, a vast inherited library of human experience, shared by all of us, residing beneath the layers of our personal memories. It's not a place for specific facts like your grocery list, or that embarrassing thing you said in high school, but rather a repository of universal patterns, instincts, and predispositions. Think of it as the original cloud storage, but for the fundamental human condition, predating Wi-Fi by a few millennia. It's where humanity keeps its shared operating system, if you will. Within this collective unconscious, Jung identified what he called archetypes. These aren't actual images or specific beings, but rather inherent, universal psychic structures that predispose us to experience and respond to the world in particular ways. They are like innate blueprints for human experience, forming the foundations of our myths, dreams, and symbols. Every culture, every era without direct contact, seems to stumble upon variations of the same fundamental stories and characters. It's why you find the hero figure, the wise old man, or the great mother popping up independently across continents. And crucially for our narrative, it's why the dragon, in its myriad forms, claws its way out of the psychic soil of virtually every civilization. Consider the dragon as one of these potent archetypes. It's not merely a made-up monster. It's a profound, universal symbol emerging from our deepest shared psyche. Think back to our discussions about primeval fears, the colossal bones of giants, and the serpent's allure. These weren't just external observations. They resonated with something already present within the collective unconscious, triggering a recognition of the dragon archetype. In Jungian terms, the dragon often embodies the shadow, the darker, untamed, instinctual side of ourselves that we often repress. It's the raw power, the destructive potential, and the hidden fears that lurk within. But it's also, paradoxically, linked to the self, the totality of the psyche, representing wholeness, wisdom, and transformative power. This duality explains why dragons are often both terrifying foes and revered guardians of ancient knowledge. Remember those wisdom keepers and hoard keepers. This archetypal presence helps explain the sheer ubiquity of dragon myths. It's not just about cultural exchange, though that certainly played its part, allowing variations to blend and evolve as ideas spread along ancient trade routes, a point we touched on earlier. Instead, Jung posited that even if two isolated cultures never met, the inherent human experience and the shared structure of the collective unconscious would lead them independently to manifest similar archetypal symbols. It's like everyone's mind has a default setting for big, scaly, powerful thing that breathes fire and sometimes hoards gold. My personal shadow, for instance, probably just hoards old takeaway menus, but you get the idea. One particularly fascinating aspect of Jung's work involves the Ouroboros, an ancient symbol of a snake or dragon eating its own tail. This imagery, appearing in various forms across cultures, from ancient Egypt to alchemical texts, is a powerful archetype of cyclicality, renewal, and the integration of opposites. It represents the perpetual recreation of the self, the infinite cycle of destruction and rebirth. a perfect embodiment of the dragon's dual nature as both chaotic force and cosmic order. This isn't just a quirky tidbit. It shows how deep these symbols run, how they connect seemingly disparate ideas into a singular, profound image. The mainstream historical fact here is that Carl Jung, a figure of immense influence in 20th century psychology, developed his theories of the collective unconscious and archetypes, including the shadow and the self, after a significant intellectual break from Sigmund Freud in the early 1910s. This divergence marked the birth of analytical psychology, a distinct school of thought that focused more on spiritual and mythological dimensions of the psyche than Freud's more overtly sexual interpretations. Jung's ideas, while widely influential in fields like literature, art, and comparative religion, remain a subject of rigorous debate in empirical psychology. Historians still argue whether the apparent universality of certain myths, like the dragon myth, truly stems from an innate collective unconscious, or if it's primarily a result of extensive cultural diffusion and parallel independent development. It's a classic chicken and egg scenario, only with more scales and fire. So, when you see a hero battling a dragon, a trope we explored in Section 11, you're not just witnessing a simple tale of good versus evil. You are, in a Jungian sense, observing an externalized manifestation of an internal struggle. The hero confronts their own shadow, integrates their repressed aspects, and strives for psychological wholeness, represented by the defeated or transformed dragon. It's why these stories resonate so deeply. They mirror the universal human journey of self-discovery and individuation. The dragon is not just a monster. It is a profound echo from the depths of your own shared human experience, a symbol of both the terrifying unknown and the potential for incredible inner strength and wisdom. You feel it, don't you? That subtle prickle on the back of your neck when a shadow shifts unexpectedly, or the sudden, inexplicable drop in your stomach when a sound you can't quite place echoes from an empty room. It's not just paranoia. It's a whisper from deep within your ancient brain, a message passed down through countless generations of ancestors who absolutely, positively needed that instinct to survive. You're plugged into wiring that predates agriculture, predates cities, predates even the concept of a comfortable, climate-controlled existence where your biggest threat is a passive-aggressive email from your boss. Back then, your brain was a finely tuned instrument of survival, always scanning, always assessing. And let's be honest, if you were dropped naked into a truly primeval forest right now, relying only on your modern wits and your phone's GPS, you probably wouldn't survive the night. Your ancestors, they were masters of it, not because they were tougher in some mystical way, but because their very neurology was designed to keep them out of a predator's digestive tract. Consider the amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in your limbic system. The part of your brain that lights up like a Christmas tree whenever danger, real or perceived, rears its head. It's the same part that triggers the fight, flight, or freeze response, drenching your system with adrenaline and cortisol, sharpening your senses, making your heart pound like a drum solo. This isn't something you learn, it's hardwired. It's the reason a sudden loud bang still makes you jump, even if you logically know it's just a car backfiring. Your primeval brain, however, instantly screams, predator, or falling tree, or definitely not a delayed coffee order. And it acts first, asks questions later. This is precisely why the dragon, in its myriad forms, has such an enduring grip on our collective psyche. It's not just a monster. It's a living embodiment of every single ancestral threat bundled into one terrifying package. Think about it, the sheer scale. Your ancient self, encountering a creature far larger than anything it could hope to overpower, would be flooded with an instinctual terror. This echoes the fears that birthed tales of colossal beasts, perhaps even fueled by the discovery of colossal fossilized remains. Remember those giant bones we talked about in Section 3. Then there's the serpentine aspect, a callback to the universal presence of snakes and their pivotal role in forming dragon archetypes. A fear so deeply ingrained that many people exhibit ophidiophobia even without a single negative experience with a serpent. That swift, silent slither, the cold, unblinking gaze, the potential for venomous strike. It's a threat that bypasses conscious thought and goes straight for the ancient reptilian brain within us all. Your ancestors knew that a venomous bite was often a death sentence, no matter how quick you were on your feet. And the fire, that elemental, devastating force we explored in Section 2, linked to Earth's tremors and fiery breaths. Fire represents uncontrollable destruction, a force that can sweep away everything you know and leave nothing but ash. To face a creature that wields such power to breathe a literal inferno is to face the ultimate, insurmountable threat. It's the primal fear of the forest fire, the volcanic eruption, all concentrated into a single, malevolent will. Your internal alarm bells don't just ring. They clang with the desperate urgency of a church bell, sounding a warning of impending doom. The dragon, then, isn't just a fantasy. It's a perfect storm of environmental dangers and predatory threats, meticulously crafted by the very anxieties of early humanity. This isn't to say that our ancestors sat around a campfire drawing up blueprints for the perfect fear-inducing beast. Rather, it's that the human brain, over millennia, developed pattern recognition for danger. A large shadow, a slithering movement, a sudden burst of heat, a booming sound, these were all cues that triggered an immediate, life-saving response. The dragon, across cultures, often combines these cues. The bulk of a megafauna predator, the cunning of a serpent, the destructive power of a natural disaster, the aerial dominance of a raptor. It's almost as if our collective unconscious, which Carl Jung theorized about in Section 16, took all these individual fear stimuli and synthesized them into one supreme terror. Historians still argue whether the consistent depiction of serpentine features in early proto-dragon figures across disparate cultures points to a shared ancestral memory, or simply a universal human response to the threat of venomous reptiles. Perhaps it's a bit of both, a neurological predisposition combined with the omnipresent danger of the natural world. There's a quirky tidbit about how researchers have shown that infants, who haven't yet learned to associate snakes with danger, will still react with increased pupil dilation and attention when shown images of snakes compared to other animals, suggesting an innate, hardwired alert system. Your brain, right now, as you listen, is processing countless bits of information, most of it irrelevant to survival. But deep down, it's still running that old, reliable program. Is there a threat? What kind of threat? How do I respond? Even in our modern, seemingly safe world, the echoes of these ancient instincts resonate. Why do we flock to horror movies or feel a strange thrill watching footage of powerful predators? Because a part of us, the very old part, is still fascinated by danger, still rehearsing responses, still testing our own limits. The dragon, therefore, isn't just a mythical creature. It's a reflection of our own ancient, primal fears, a testament to the evolutionary traces etched into the very fabric of our being. It's the ultimate embodiment of "you probably won't survive this." an instinctive response to a world where danger lurked behind every rustle in the undergrowth, where every shadow held a potential threat, and where the only thing separating you from becoming someone else's dinner was the lightning-fast reaction of your ancient, vigilant brain. And thankfully, for most of us now, the only dragon we face is the one waiting for us to finally get up and deal with that overflowing laundry basket. A much less terrifying foe, wouldn't you agree? Though sometimes it feels just as insurmountable. You feel the crackle of the fire on your skin, its warmth a comforting embrace against the encroaching chill of night. Around you, faces are illuminated by the flickering flames, eyes wide, breath held. A low hum vibrates in the air, a storyteller's voice, weaving threads of fear and wonder into a tapestry of sound. You're not just hearing a story, you're living it. The shadows dance, elongating, distorting, becoming the very creature the words describe, scales gleaming, eyes burning, a roar that rips through the ancient forest, echoing not just in your ears but deep in your very bones. This, you realize, is the crucible where dragons were truly forged and reforged across millennia. The sheer, undeniable power of narrative. It's an almost physical sensation, this collective surrender to a tale. You're transported, you're present in the impossible, you're experiencing the hunt, the terror, the awe. This isn't just entertainment, it's survival. Remember how we talked about those primeval fears, the deep-seated dread of apex predators, the instinctive flinch at the sight of a coiled serpent. Storytelling took those raw, visceral reactions and gave them form, gave them a name, gave them a narrative arc. It's one thing to be scared of a lion. It's another to hear the epic of a hero who faced a creature worse than any lion, a beast of fire and shadow. And frankly, if that beast were real, you probably wouldn't survive this. So let's be grateful for the safety of these spoken words, shall we? Imagine, for a moment, the world before written language, before scrolls or screens. Your ancestors gathered just like this, under a vast, unblemished sky. The stories they shared were their history, their science, their religion, and their entertainment. A good story, a truly compelling narrative, was a treasure more valuable than gold. It was how knowledge was passed down, how warnings were issued, how identity was shaped. And what makes a story more compelling, more memorable than a creature of impossible power, a symbol so potent it could represent everything from destructive chaos to divine wisdom? Dragons fit the bill perfectly. They were the ultimate plot device, the cosmic villain, the benevolent guardian, the insurmountable obstacle, or the source of unimaginable wealth. They were infinitely adaptable, a narrative Swiss army knife. Consider the oral traditions of the Celts, where bards held a revered place, their memories vast libraries of lore. Or the epic recitations in ancient Greece, where poets like Homer would captivate audiences for days with tales of gods, heroes, and monsters. Historians still argue whether figures like Homer were single individuals or collective names for a lineage of storytellers. But what's undeniable is the profound impact their narratives had, shaping cultural identity for centuries. These were not just simple tales. They were intricate tapestries woven with rich imagery, rhythmic language, and emotional resonance designed to be remembered, to be repeated, to be lived. When a bard spoke of a dragon, they didn't just describe it. They made you feel its heat, smell its sulfurous breath, hear the scraping of its colossal claws on stone. The performance was everything. This deep engagement, this immersive experience, solidified the dragon's place in the collective consciousness. It wasn't enough for a culture to merely invent a winged serpent. They had to invent a compelling story about it. Was it guarding a hoard? like the dragon in the Icelandic saga of Ragnar Lodbrok? Was it a monstrous sea serpent rising from the depths to capsize ships? A nightmare plucked straight from the anxieties of ancient mariners, perhaps inspired by accounts of giant squid, making you think twice about that next fishing trip? Or was it a benevolent bringer of rain, as in many Chinese myths, where emperors would pray to dragon deities during droughts? Each narrative gave the creature new life, new meaning, cementing its iconic status. It's like how we can't stop watching disaster movies even though we know exactly how they end. There's a strange comfort in confronting our fears within a controlled narrative. The repetition, too, played a crucial role. Grandparents told their grandchildren, hunters whispered tales around campfires, shamans recounted visions in ritualistic settings. Each retelling, while perhaps slightly altered, reinforced the core imagery and thematic significance of the dragon. This wasn't a static creature. It was a fluid concept, constantly reshaped by local fears and aspirations, yet always retaining that unmistakable core of reptilian power. It's a bit like playing a game of telephone across a few millennia. You start with scary snake, and somehow you end up with a fire-breathing, gold-hoarding lizard with wings. And yet, the essence remains. Even quirkier bits of lore, like the medieval European belief that certain dragons preferred to make their lairs in abandoned castles, hinting at a sort of refined taste in real estate, demonstrate how stories added layers of detail and personality. It wasn't just a monster. It was a character with habits, preferences, and a penchant for dramatic entrances. These small, idiosyncratic elements might have been added by a particularly imaginative storyteller, then caught on, becoming part of the broader narrative tradition. It shows the living, breathing nature of oral history. Moreover, the emotional payoff of dragon stories was immense. Think of the catharsis of the hero's triumph over such an overwhelming foe. Remember our discussion of the hero's journey. The dragon became the ultimate test, the embodiment of chaos that had to be overcome for order to be restored. This narrative arc resonated deeply with people facing very real challenges in their own lives, offering a metaphorical framework for understanding their struggles and triumphs. The dragon wasn't just a monster. It was the personification of all that was difficult, dangerous, and untamed in the world. And when the hero slew it, or, in the East, appeased it, it offered a profound sense of hope and mastery. So, as you drift deeper into the realm of sleep, consider the humble storytellers. They weren't just entertainers. They were the guardians of the collective imagination, the architects of our shared mythologies. Their whispered words, their dramatic gestures, their impassioned voices. These were the true power that ensured dragons, in all their fearsome and wondrous forms, would continue to fly through the dreams and nightmares of humanity, millennium after millennium. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful forces aren't physical, but reside in the intangible magic of a well-told tale. You're probably curled up, maybe with a screen glowing softly nearby, or perhaps just the lingering hum of the day's digital noise in your ears. You think about escaping, about worlds beyond this one, and inevitably your mind drifts to them, doesn't it? The scales, the roar, the sheer undeniable presence. Because even now, as you lie there in a world crisscrossed by Wi-Fi signals and drone flights, the dragon isn't some dusty relic confined to ancient texts. Oh no, you probably won't survive 5 minutes at a modern fantasy convention without bumping into someone dressed as a dragon, or at least carrying a dragon-emblazoned tote bag. The dragon, my friend, is alive and well, thriving in the digital ether and on the silver screen, a testament to its unyielding grip on our collective imagination. Think about it. The flickering glow of a television, and suddenly you're soaring over Westeros on the back of Drogon, feeling the wind whip through your hair, the heat of dragon fire on your cheeks. George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire didn't just reintroduce dragons to a global audience. It made them central, terrifying, and strangely empathetic characters. These aren't just monsters. They're weapons, companions, and symbols of ancient power. Their return to prominence in a hyper-connected age wasn't an accident. It was a reaffirmation of their timeless appeal. You watch Daenerys whisper Dracarys, and a shiver runs down your spine, not just from the visual spectacle, but from that deep, ancestral recognition of overwhelming force. That echo of primeval awe we talked about when we considered Earth's tremors and fiery breaths. Then there's the sheer delight of films like How to Train Your Dragon, which flipped the script entirely, turning the terrifying beast into a loyal, even adorable companion. Toothless, with his expressive eyes and playful antics, is as much a pet as he is a mythical creature. This shift showcases the incredible malleability of the dragon mythos. It can be the destructive force of chaos, or it can be a symbol of friendship and understanding. This duality, remember, has always been part of the dragon's nature, whether it was the benevolent rain-bringer of the East or the gold-hoarding menace of the West. It's fascinating how even in a story ostensibly for children, the core archetypes, the powerful flight, the bond, the unique voice remain. And in games, the immersion is even deeper. You find yourself navigating the treacherous lands of Skyrim, where every shadow might conceal a dragon waiting to descend from the sky, its roar echoing through the mountains. Or perhaps you're building a party in Dragon Age, your choices shaping the very nature of these powerful beings. The mainstream historical fact here isn't about ancient cultures, but about modern cultural impact. J.R.R. Tolkien's Smaug from The Hobbit laid a foundational cornerstone for the modern Western dragon in fantasy literature, solidifying the image of the intelligent, verbose, and avaricious horde-guarding creature. His influence on subsequent fantasy writers cannot be overstated, creating a template that countless authors and game designers have either emulated or consciously subverted. You see Smaug's scales glinting in the firelight of many a contemporary fantasy novel, even if the new dragon is a heroic one. And for a quirky tidbit, consider the bizarre evolution of dragon designs in early video games. Remember those blocky, pixelated dragons from 8-bit or 16-bit eras? Often, they were just generic large monsters, perhaps breathing a few pixels of fire. Yet, even with minimal graphical fidelity, they evoked a sense of dread and challenge, relying entirely on the player's pre-existing cultural understanding of what a dragon meant. Fast forward to today, and you have hyper-realistic dragons with individual personalities, intricate scale patterns, and dynamic flight animations that make you believe they could genuinely exist. From the simple sprite to the complex 3D model, the dragon has adapted to every technological leap, proving its visual resilience. The power of these modern narratives lies in their ability to tap into those very primal fears, and all that first gave birth to the dragon. Whether it's the sheer destructive power of a Godzilla-like kaiju, or the majestic wisdom of a dragon in a role-playing game, these creatures continue to represent the untamed wild, the ultimate challenge, and the boundless potential of the fantastic. They are simultaneously the monster under the bed and the loyal companion, the symbol of impending doom and the bringer of prosperity. Historians still argue whether the widespread reemergence of dragons in the 20th century was a genuine cultural rediscovery, or simply a commercial exploitation of pre-existing archetypes. But perhaps it's both. Perhaps the market simply responded to an innate, latent hunger within us for these magnificent, terrifying, and endlessly fascinating creatures. From the quiet contemplation of an ancient scroll to the explosive CGI spectacle of a modern blockbuster, the dragon endures. It changes its scales, shifts its roar, but its essence remains, a testament to humanity's enduring need for the grand, the fearful, and the sublime. You can't escape them, nor, it seems, do we really want to. They are a part of our story now and forever. You stand now at the precipice of understanding, staring not into the abyss of forgotten ages, but into the shimmering, ever-present echo of the dragon. You realize, don't you, that even as we speak, somewhere on this spinning blue marble, a child is tracing the fierce outline of a scaled beast in a coloring book. A teenager is slaying a virtual worm on their screen, and an author is weaving a new saga around the ancient power of these mythical creatures. If you were to encounter a real one, you probably wouldn't survive, but the sheer fantasy of it, the primal thrill, remains intoxicating. It's captivating, isn't it, how something born from the deepest, darkest corners of the human mind, sculpted from shared fears of predators, the raw power of earthquakes, and the unsettling discovery of colossal bones, could evolve into such a diverse and enduring symbol. You see them everywhere still. From the serpentine grace of a Chinese New Year parade dragon, symbolizing good fortune and imperial power, a direct lineage from those ancient emperors who claimed them as their own personal brand consultants, to the terrifying, fire-breathing behemoths of Western lore. Forever locked in battle with a shining knight, dragons continue to hold court in our collective imagination. We've talked about how they were the embodiment of chaos, the bringers of storms, and the guardians of wisdom, their multifaceted nature allowing them to adapt to nearly every narrative need. It's almost as if they possess an inherent adaptability gene, an evolutionary trait in the mythological kingdom. Think back to the earliest whispers of the serpent's allure, how the simple form of a snake, slithering across the ground, or a fish, swimming through the depths, morphed into something grander, something that could take to the skies or command the waters. Remember those sky serpents, how celestial phenomena, the streaking comet or the shimmering Milky Way, became the paths of cosmic dragons, weaving through the constellations. We've spun tales from every observable wonder and every deep-seated dread. There's a mainstream historical fact right there, in how the iconography of dragons often mirrored the geopolitical powers of their time, with Eastern dragons symbolizing the centralized, benevolent power of empires, while Western dragons often represented the fragmented, threatening forces that needed to be conquered by individual heroes or burgeoning kingdoms. It's almost like they were the world's first political cartoons, but way more effective because, you know, fire. And then there's that peculiar, quirky tidbit you might not consider. Some researchers have proposed that the very structure of the human eye, with its innate ability to detect slithering movements and large, reptilian shapes, might predispose us to finding creatures like dragons inherently fascinating or terrifying. It's like our brains are hardwired for a Dragon Detection 101 class, though thankfully, the only dragons we usually encounter now are made of pixels or ink. It really makes you wonder if our ancient ancestors, stumbling upon a fossilized dinosaur femur, truly believed they'd found the remains of a creature that breathed fire, or if the storytelling just got a little exaggerated, shall we say, over time. Historians still argue whether the earliest dragon myths were direct interpretations of fossil finds, or if the myths themselves shaped how unusual bone discoveries were explained. It's a chicken and egg situation, but with more scales and less clucking. The allure of dragons isn't just about fear or power. It's also about the fundamental human desire for meaning, for stories that help us understand the world around us. They are a canvas for our anxieties, our hopes, and our aspirations. They are the ultimate adversary, the ultimate guardian, the ultimate mystery. We see them reflected in the hero's journey, that classic narrative arc where confronting the dragon isn't just about slaying a beast, but about confronting one's own inner demons, about finding courage you didn't know you possessed. Because let's be honest, if your biggest fear is public speaking, battling a dragon seems like a pretty good way to put things in perspective. Oh, you want me to give a presentation? At least it's not a three-headed hydra, right? The dragon's legacy persists because it's a living, breathing symbol, constantly adapting, constantly being reinterpreted. From J.R.R. Tolkien's Smaug, whose avarice and cunning are almost painfully human, to the more benevolent, often misunderstood dragons of modern fantasy. They continue to evolve, reflecting our changing understanding of good and evil, power and responsibility. The collective unconscious, as Jung suggested, truly holds a universal blueprint for these archetypal figures, making them instantly recognizable, even as their specifics vary wildly from one culture to the next. As you drift now, letting the echoes of ancient scales and fiery breaths dissipate, feel the quiet comfort of your bed around you. The dragons of old, those primordial fears and awe-inspiring wonders, have receded into the gentle mists of storytelling, leaving behind only the soft hum of their enduring magic. The journey through their myriad forms, from subterranean hordes to celestial pathways, has been a testament to the incredible tapestry of human imagination, a reminder that even our deepest fears can be woven into something beautiful and profound. You've journeyed through millennia, traversing continents and cultures, all from the quiet comfort of your own mind. There's a certain peace in knowing that these magnificent creatures, born from our shared human experience, will continue to inspire, to challenge, and to fascinate for countless generations to come. Their roars, once terrifying, now echo softly, a lullaby whispered by the winds of time, fading gently into the stillness of the night. Rest now, with the ancient guardians of dreams keeping watch over your slumber. Sweet dreams.